With her newborn clutched to her breast and blood soaking the desert sand beneath her, Maria watched the Apache warrior approach through death-blurred vision. His decision in that moment would either end their suffering or forge a family from two broken souls neither world wanted. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The Arizona sun beat down without mercy, turning the desert air into a shimmering veil of heat that wavered above the cracked earth. Maria Sanchez stumbled forward, one hand pressed against her swollen belly, the other clutching a small bundle of belongings wrapped in a threadbare shawl. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her once vibrant olive skin now dulled by dust and exhaustion. 4 days had passed since Thomas had discovered her secret and abandoned her on this desolate trail, taking their wagon, supplies, and even the water canteen she had filled that morning. "You've been hiding this from me for months," he had hissed, his blue eyes cold as winter sky as he gestured to her belly. "I won't raise another man's bastard." His words still cut through her heart, sharper than any knife. The child was his. She had never known another man, but Thomas Blackwood had made up his mind, and Maria knew no amount of tears or truth would change it. She had watched in disbelief as he mounted their horse and rode away, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and the unborn child in her womb. The wagon train had continued west without a backward glance. No one wanted to burden themselves with a pregnant Mexican girl abandoned by her American fiancé. A sharp pain tore through Maria's abdomen, forcing her to her knees on the scorching ground. "Not now," she silently pleaded, "not here in this emptiness." But her body had its own wisdom, its own timing. Another contraction gripped her, stronger than the first, and she crawled toward the shadow of a massive sun-bleached boulder. The baby was coming, here in this wilderness where vultures circled overhead, and the only witness would be the indifferent desert sky. "Dios mío, ayúdame," she whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself. Maria braced herself against the rough surface of the rock and surrendered to the ancient rhythm of birth. Hours passed in a blur of pain and desperate determination. The sun began its descent, painting the horizon in shades of orange and crimson as if the sky itself were bleeding. When Maria finally held her son in her trembling arms, the last light of day caught in his damp, dark hair. He was small but perfect, his tiny fists clenched as he let out a weak cry that seemed to echo across the empty landscape. "Tienes mi corazón," she murmured against his forehead. "You have my heart." But as darkness fell and the desert cold crept in, Maria felt her strength ebbing away with the warmth. Blood pooled beneath her, too much blood, and she knew with terrible clarity that she might not live to see her son grow. She wrapped him in the remains of her shawl and held him close, trying to share what little warmth remained in her body. "I'm sorry, mi pequeño," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Tears streaked clean paths down her dust-covered face as she gazed at his perfect features, memorizing them for whatever afterlife might await her. It was then that she heard it, the soft thud of hoofbeats approaching through the darkness. Maria clutched her baby tighter, fear surging through her exhausted body, bandits perhaps, or wild animals drawn by the scent of blood. She had nothing to defend herself with, not even the strength to run. A massive black stallion materialized from the shadows, its rider tall and imposing in the moonlight. Maria's heart thundered in her chest as she made out his features. The long black hair, the sharp angles of his face, the intensity of his dark eyes as they found her huddled against the rock. Apache. She had heard stories, terrible stories, in the border towns. The warrior dismounted in one fluid motion, his movements silent and graceful as a mountain lion. He approached slowly, and Maria could now see the eagle feather tied in his hair, the intricate beadwork on his leather vest, the knife sheathed at his side. His face betrayed no emotion as he looked down at her and the newborn in her arms. Maria summoned the last of her courage and met his gaze directly. If death had come for her, she would face it with dignity. But something in the warrior's eyes made her pause, not cruelty or indifference, but a flicker of recognition, as if he were seeing a ghost from his own past. He knelt beside her, reaching for something at his waist. Maria tensed, but instead of a weapon, he produced a water skin. With deliberate gentleness, he offered it to her. "Nachkohe," he said, touching his chest. Then he pointed to the water skin. "Drink." Nachkohe watched as the woman's trembling hands reached for the water skin. Her eyes never left his, dark with fear but defiant, like a wounded deer that refuses to surrender. He recognized that look, had seen it in the eyes of his wife Talasi when the spotted sickness came to their village 2 winters ago. That same fierce determination to protect life, even as it slipped away. The woman drank cautiously at first, then with desperate thirst. Water spilled down her chin, mixing with dust and tears. When she had finished, she offered the skin to her infant, tipping a few precious drops onto his tiny lips. "Gracias," she whispered, her voice rough as desert sand. Nakohe said nothing. Words were hollow things, easily scattered by the wind. Instead, he moved with quiet efficiency, gathering wood for a fire. The woman needed warmth, and the night creatures kept their distance from flames. As he worked, his mind drifted to the vision that had led him here. 3 days he had fasted on the sacred mountain, seeking guidance from the spirits after months of emptiness. His heart had been a hollow drum since Talasi and their infant son had been claimed by the sickness, their bodies committed to the earth while winter winds howled like mourners. The tribal elders spoke of healing, of taking another wife, but Nakohe had turned away from their counsel, retreating into solitude and grief. It was on the 3rd night of his fast that the vision came, an eagle soaring above a boulder, circling something precious hidden in its shadow. Nakohe had followed this sign without understanding, trusting the wisdom of his ancestors to guide him. Now, watching the woman cradle her child, he understood why the spirits had led him here. The fire caught, sending orange light dancing across the rocky ground. In its glow, Nakohe could see the dark pool of blood beneath the woman, the unnatural pallor of her skin despite her sun-darkened complexion. Without proper care, neither she nor the child would survive until morning. He approached again, moving slowly to avoid frightening her further. From a pouch at his waist, he removed dried herbs and roots gathered during his journey. He gestured to her wound, then to the plants in his palm. "Medicine," he said in halting Spanish, one of the few words he had learned through trading. "Help you." The woman hesitated, clutching her baby tighter. Then, with resignation in her eyes, she nodded once. Nakohe set to work, crushing the herbs between smooth river stones and mixing them with water from his skin. He had learned healing arts from his grandmother, who had been the tribe's medicine woman before her passing. His hands remembered what his heart wished to forget, how to tend the sick, how to coax life back when death hovered near. As he applied the poultice to stem her bleeding, he noticed the crude severing of the infant's cord, likely done with whatever the woman had at hand. He cleaned this too, wrapping it with a strip of leather from his own shirt. The baby whimpered softly but did not cry out, conserving his meager strength. "Maria," the woman said suddenly, pressing one hand to her chest. "Maria Sanchez." She touched the baby's head gently. "Miguel." "Maria," Nakohe repeated, the name unfamiliar on his tongue. He nodded toward the infant. "Miguel." Names were power, an acknowledgement of existence. By speaking theirs, he had accepted responsibility for their lives. When he had done all he could for her wounds, Nakohe retrieved a bundle from his horse, dried meat, pine nuts, and a small pouch of cornmeal. He offered the meat to Maria, who accepted it with trembling gratitude. She tore off tiny pieces, softening them in her mouth before placing them between her baby's lips. Nakohe sat across the fire, watching them. The woman should not be moved tonight, not with such fresh wounds, but remaining here was dangerous. This was contested land, claimed by his people, by Mexican settlers, and by white soldiers who recognized no claim but their own. By dawn, he would need to decide their path. As the night deepened around them, Maria's eyes grew heavy. She fought sleep, her body jerking awake each time her head began to droop. Nakohe understood her fear. To sleep was to become vulnerable, and she had no reason to trust him beyond the small kindnesses he had shown. He removed his leather vest and offered it to her. "Sleep," he said. "I watch." Maria looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as if trying to read his intentions in the firelight. Finally, she wrapped the vest around her baby and leaned back against the boulder, her body surrendering to exhaustion. Nakohe remained vigilant as the stars wheeled overhead, his decision already made. The spirits had not led him to this woman and child, only to abandon them. Whether path or punishment, he would see it through. Dawn broke in ribbons of gold and pink across the eastern sky. Maria opened her eyes, momentarily confused by the smell of smoke and unfamiliar leather beneath her cheek. Memory returned with painful clarity, the birth, the blood, the silent warrior who had appeared like a vision in the darkness. She jerked upright, instinctively reaching for Miguel. Her son lay bundled against her chest, his breathing steady and stronger than the night before. Maria exhaled in relief, then glanced around for the Apache man. She found him crouched by the fire, adding small twigs to coax the flames higher. His profile was sharp against the morning light, his expression unreadable. "Nakohe," she said softly, testing his name. He turned, studying her with those intense eyes that seemed to see beyond surfaces. He pointed to her, then to Miguel, and finally to his chest. With deliberate movements, he pantomimed riding on horseback, then pointed west toward distant mountains. Maria understood. He was offering to take them with him. Her chest tightened with conflicting emotions, fear of this unknown man and the people he came from, but also the stark reality that she and Miguel would die without help. The desert would show no mercy to a weakened woman and newborn. "Yes," she said, nodding. "Por favor." Nakohe brought her another strip of dried meat and offered his water skin again. While she ate, he packed his few belongings with practiced efficiency. Maria watched his movements, trying to read his intentions in the way he handled his possessions, in the careful glances he cast toward the horizon. Not once did his hand stray to his knife, unless needed for a task. Not once did his eyes linger on her with anything resembling the hunger she had seen in other men's gazes. When it was time to leave, Nakohe approached and gestured that he would need to lift her. Maria hesitated, clutching Miguel tighter. No man had touched her since Thomas, and the memory of his betrayal was still raw. But Nakohe waited patiently, his hands open at his sides, his stance non-threatening. "Está bien," she whispered finally, more to herself than to him. Nakohe lifted her as if she weighed nothing, careful not to jostle the baby or press against her wounds. He set her atop his stallion, then mounted behind her, one arm securing her to his chest while the other held the reins. Maria sat rigidly at first, unused to such proximity with a stranger. The horse began to move, and she swayed with exhaustion and pain. "Lean," Nakohe said, his breath warm against her ear. "Rest." Gradually, Maria allowed herself to relax against his solid presence. Miguel slept peacefully in the sling she had fashioned from her shawl, lulled by the rhythm of the horse's gait. The sun climbed higher, its heat intensifying, but Nakohe guided them through shaded arroyos and along hidden paths that seemed to appear and disappear with the shifting light. They stopped occasionally for water and rest. During one such break, as Maria nursed Miguel beneath the sparse shade of a mesquite tree, she caught Nakohe watching with an expression that startled her, not embarrassment or impropriety, but profound sadness. He looked away quickly when their eyes met, busying himself with checking the horse's hooves. "You had a child," Maria said softly, the realization dawning. "A family." Nakohe stiffened but did not deny it. After a long silence, he touched his chest with a closed fist. "Gone," he said. "2 winters." He held up 2 fingers to emphasize. Maria's throat tightened. "Lo siento," she offered. "I'm sorry." He nodded once, accepting her sympathy without comment. They did not speak again until they resumed their journey. As the day wore on, Maria began to notice subtle changes in the landscape. More vegetation, signs of wildlife, the distant silhouette of mountains growing more defined. Nakohe seemed to relax incrementally as they moved deeper into what she assumed was Apache territory, though his vigilance never fully waned. By late afternoon, Miguel had grown fussy, his cries sharp against the desert stillness. Nakohe guided the horse toward a small spring nestled among rocks, where clear water bubbled up from hidden depths. He dismounted first, then helped Maria down with the same careful respect he had shown earlier. "Rest here," he said, gesturing to a flat stone beside the spring. "I hunt. Bring food." Maria nodded, watching as he strung his bow and melted into the scrubland like a shadow. Left alone, she had her first opportunity to flee if she wished. The horse was tethered loosely nearby, loaded with Nakohe's supplies. She could take it, try to find her way back to the settler's trail. Instead, she dipped her feet in the cool water of the spring and washed Miguel's face gently, whispering promises she hoped she could keep. Whatever waited at the end of this journey with Nakohe, it offered more hope than the empty trail behind them. Nakohe returned at dusk with a desert hare and a handful of prickly pears. He skinned and prepared the meat with practiced motions, roasting it over a small fire that sent aromatic smoke spiraling into the darkening sky. Maria watched him work, noting the economy of his movements, the way nothing was wasted. When he offered her the first portion, she accepted with a murmured "gracias," savoring the rich taste after days of near starvation. They ate in companionable silence, the barriers of language less significant now. Miguel slept peacefully beside her, his breathing steady and strong, a miracle considering his harsh entry into the world. "Tomorrow," Nakohe said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "My people." He gestured toward the distant mountains that loomed like guardians against the horizon. Maria tensed. "Will they?" She struggled to find the words, then made a cutting motion across her throat. Nakohe's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "No harm," he assured her, placing his hand over his heart. "My protection." Maria wasn't certain if his promise would be enough, but she nodded. What choice did she have? Thomas had abandoned her. Her own family was hundreds of miles south across a border that existed on maps, but not in her heart. And the white settlers wanted nothing to do with a Mexican girl carrying what they assumed was a half-breed child. That night, she slept under Nakohe's watchful gaze, her dreams troubled by faceless figures and distant shouts. They set out before sunrise, Miguel nestled securely against Maria's chest. As they traveled, the landscape transformed gradually. More juniper trees appeared, scrub gave way to grasses, and the soil darkened with moisture. By midday, they were following a narrow path that wound through a canyon, the walls rising high on either side like ancient sentinels. Nakohe grew noticeably tenser as they approached what Maria assumed was tribal land. His posture straightened, and he scanned the ridgelines constantly. Suddenly, he raised his hand in greeting. Following his gaze, Maria spotted 2 figures on horseback watching from a rocky outcropping. Apache scouts, their faces impassive as they observed the strange pair. One of the scouts descended to meet them, his expression hardening when he saw Maria. A rapid exchange in Apache followed, Nakohe's tone remaining calm while the scouts grew increasingly agitated. The scout pointed at Maria repeatedly, his gestures sharp and accusatory. Kiantu says you bring danger, Nakohe explained, switching to Spanish. White woman means trouble. I'm not white, Maria replied, lifting her chin. I'm Mexican. Nakohe translated this, but Kiantu seemed unimpressed by the distinction. He spat words that needed no translation, then wheeled his horse around and galloped ahead, presumably to warn the others. He is young, Nakohe said, though Maria detected a hint of concern beneath his stoic exterior. The elders will decide. They continued their journey in tense silence. By late afternoon, they reached a hidden valley nestled between two mountain ridges. Maria gasped softly at the sight. A dozen wickiups constructed of brush and animal hides arranged in a loose circle, smoke rising from cooking fires, children playing near a small stream that meandered through the center of the encampment. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. Activities ceased as people emerged from dwellings and gathered to observe the newcomers. Women clutched children to their sides, men reached for weapons, and a palpable tension filled the air like the electric charge before a storm. An elderly man stepped forward, his face deeply lined, his bearing dignified despite his advanced years. He wore a necklace of bear claws and carried a staff adorned with eagle feathers. Chief or shaman, Maria guessed, or perhaps both. Nakohe dismounted first, then helped Maria down. She stood on trembling legs, holding Miguel close, as dozens of dark eyes studied her with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Kiantu stood among a group of younger warriors, his stance aggressive as he spoke rapidly to his companions. Nakohe approached the elder and began speaking in their language, occasionally gesturing toward Maria and Miguel. The old man listened without interruption, his gaze sharp despite his years. When Nakohe finished, the elder approached Maria slowly, stopping just before her. "This is Ashki Digin," Nakohe said. "Holy boy, our medicine man." Ashki Digin reached out one gnarled hand toward Miguel. Maria instinctively stepped back, protective fear surging through her. "He will not hurt him," Nakohe assured her. "He wishes to see." With great reluctance, Maria loosened her hold on Miguel, allowing the elder to see his face. Ashki Digin studied the infant for a long moment, then spoke words that made Nakohe's eyebrows rise in surprise. "What did he say?" Maria whispered. "He says Miguel has the spirit of a warrior," Nakohe replied, "and that you have the heart of our women." The elder turned away and addressed the gathered tribe. Whatever he said caused a ripple of reaction. Some nodded in agreement, others shook their heads, and Kiantu's group muttered among themselves with obvious disapproval. A woman separated herself from the crowd, middle-aged, with a stern face but kind eyes. She approached Maria and examined her with frank assessment, taking in her exhausted state and the telltale signs of recent childbirth. "This is Bitsoy," Nakohe explained, "grandmother of many. She is our healer." Bitsoy spoke to Nakohe, who translated, "She says you need rest and medicine. She will help you." The woman gestured for Maria to follow her. Maria looked uncertainly at Nakohe. "Go," he said. "You are safe with her. I must speak with the council." Maria took a deep breath and followed Bitsoy toward one of the wickiups. As they walked, she felt the stares of the entire tribe boring into her back. Whatever welcome she had been granted felt provisional at best, hostile at worst. Only Nakohe's presence had prevented immediate rejection, or worse. Inside Bitsoy's dwelling, Maria found unexpected comfort. Fresh hides covered the floor, and the air smelled of herbs and smoke. The older woman indicated a pallet where Maria could sit, then began gathering supplies from leather pouches hung around the interior. "Thank you," Maria said, knowing the woman wouldn't understand the words but hoping the sentiment would transcend language. Bitsoy paused and looked at her directly, then touched her own heart and pointed to Maria's. Some emotions, it seemed, needed no translation. Days melted into one another as Maria recovered under Bitsoy's watchful care. The older woman changed her poultices twice daily, brewing teas of unfamiliar herbs that tasted bitter but seemed to speed healing. Miguel thrived, his cheeks filling out, his cries growing stronger. Several of the tribe's women would stop by Bitsoy's wickiup, ostensibly to assist the healer, but clearly curious about the stranger and her infant. Maria saw little of Nakohe during those first days. Occasionally, she would glimpse him returning from hunts or speaking with tribal elders, but he kept his distance. She understood without being told. His protection extended to her presence here, but too close an association might compromise her tenuous acceptance. On the fifth day, Bitsoy indicated through gestures that Maria should rise and walk outside. Her legs were weak from disuse, but she managed to step into the sunshine, Miguel cradled in her arms. The camp's daily activities paused briefly as people noted her appearance, then resumed with deliberate normalcy. Bitsoy led her to a group of women working by the stream. They were scraping hides, their hands moving with practiced efficiency. One of them, younger than the rest, with a round face and eyes that crinkled when she smiled, patted the ground beside her in invitation. "Nijoni," she said, touching her chest. "Maria," she replied, settling awkwardly on the ground. Nijoni reached out tentatively toward Miguel. "Baby, name?" she asked in halting Spanish. "Miguel," Maria answered, surprised by the attempt at her language. The young woman repeated it carefully, then beamed with satisfaction. She tapped her own rounded belly, clearly pregnant. "Soon," she said. A connection formed between them in that simple exchange. Two mothers, one experienced and one expectant, separated by culture but united by the universal language of creation and nurturing. Nijoni offered Maria a scraper and demonstrated the proper technique for cleaning hides. Though Maria's movements were clumsy at first, she was eager to contribute, to be more than a burden. As she worked, Maria observed the camp's rhythms. Children played games involving stones and sticks, their laughter universal. Women cooked, sewed, and tended younger children. Men prepared for hunts, fashioned weapons, or stood guard. There was a harmony to their existence that reminded Maria of her childhood village in Mexico before drought and violence had driven her family north. Kiantu and his followers made their disapproval known through pointed silences and hostile stares. When they passed near Maria, they would turn away ostentatiously or mutter comments that needed no translation. Bitsoy ignored them pointedly, which gave Maria courage to do the same. Late that afternoon, as shadows lengthened across the valley, Nakohe appeared at the edge of the work circle. The women fell silent, exchanging knowing glances. He approached with measured steps, stopping at a respectful distance. "Walk," he asked Maria, gesturing toward the stream. She nodded, handing Miguel to Bitsoy, who accepted the infant with practiced ease. As Maria rose to follow Nakohe, she caught Nijoni's encouraging smile. They walked in silence until they reached a bend in the stream where a large cottonwood provided shade and privacy. Nakohe sat on a sun-warmed stone and indicated Maria should join him. "Council has decided," he said finally. "You and Miguel may stay through winter." Maria exhaled slowly. "Thank you." "Not all agree," he continued, his brow furrowed. "Kiantu and others say white eyes will come looking. Bring soldiers." "I have no one looking for me," Maria replied bitterly. "Thomas made sure of that." "Thomas?" Nakohe questioned. Maria touched her belly, then made a pushing away gesture. "Miguel's father. He left us when he learned I carried his child." Nakohe's expression darkened. "No honor," he said. The simple phrase weighted with contempt. "No," Maria agreed softly. "No honor." They sat quietly for a moment, the stream's gentle music filling the silence between them. A fish jumped, catching the light as it arced through the air before disappearing back into the water. "You saved us," Maria said finally. "Why?" Nakohe seemed to weigh his response carefully. 2 winters ago, sickness came to our people. many died. His voice remained steady, but pain shadowed his eyes. My wife, Talasi, our son not yet walking. Maria's heart constricted. I'm sorry, she whispered. I could not save them, Nakohe continued, but you, the eagle, showed me where to find you. Eagle? In my vision quest, 3 days without food or water, seeking guidance from the spirits. The eagle led me to your boulder. He looked at her directly. Perhaps to make balance. Balance. The concept resonated with Maria's Catholic upbringing, sin and redemption, debt and payment. Perhaps Nakohe saw saving her and Miguel as atonement for failing to save his own family, though she suspected no fault lay with him. What will happen after winter? She asked. Nakohe shrugged slightly. Many things can change with seasons. Kiantu may become less angry. You may learn our ways, or, he hesitated, you may wish to find your own people again. The thought struck Maria like a physical blow. Her own people had offered her nothing but rejection and hardship. Her family in Mexico was likely dead or scattered by now. Thomas had abandoned her. The settlers had turned away. Here, at least, she had been given shelter, healing, and the beginnings of acceptance. I have no people, she said firmly. Not anymore. Nakohe studied her face, seeming to search for certainty in her expression. Whatever he found appeared to satisfy him. Then perhaps you make new people, he said simply. Here, Dudigiju. As they walked back to camp, Maria noticed Kiantu watching from the shadows of a juniper tree, his expression unreadable in the fading light. A chill ran down her spine despite the evening warmth. Later, as she nursed Miguel in Bitsoy's wickiup, the older woman handed her a small object, a carved wooden amulet on a leather cord. It depicted an eagle with outspread wings. Bitsoy pointed to it, then to Maria, and finally upward toward the sky with an expression of solemn significance. Maria slipped the cord over her head, the eagle resting against her heart. Protection, she thought, or perhaps belonging. Autumn touched the valley with gentle fingers, painting the cottonwoods gold and the sumac crimson. The air grew crisper, especially in the mornings when frost laced the grasses near the stream. 2 moons had passed since Maria's arrival, and with each day she felt less like an outsider and more like a cautious participant in the life of the tribe. She had moved from Bitsoy's wickiup to a small shelter of her own, constructed by several women under the healer's direction. It stood at the edge of the camp, not central enough to suggest full belonging, but not so distant as to imply exclusion. Nakohe had contributed a thick buffalo hide for warmth and several rabbit skins that Maria had sewn into a carrier for Miguel. The infant thrived, growing plump on Maria's milk, which flowed abundantly thanks to Bitsoy's herbal teas and the steady meals of game, wild plants and acorn flour that sustained the tribe. His dark eyes tracked movement with increasing focus, and his strong grip clutched at Maria's hair when she bent to kiss his forehead. He reaches for the world, Nizhoni observed one afternoon as they ground corn together. Her own belly had swollen further, and she often placed Maria's hand upon it to feel the kicks of her unborn child. Ta-cha, Maria replied, using the Apache word for reaching out that Nizhoni had taught her. Her vocabulary grew daily, though constructing full sentences remained challenging. Nearby, several children played a game with painted stones, their voices rising and falling like birdsong. One of them, a solemn girl of perhaps 7 summers named Dolly, had taken a particular interest in Miguel. She would bring small treasures for him, a smooth stone, a jay's feather, a perfectly round juniper berry. Today she approached with cupped hands, offering Maria a glimpse of a tiny frog. "For Miguel," she said in Apache, the words now familiar to Maria, "so he will learn to jump high." Maria smiled, accepting the gift with appropriate solemnity. "Ah, he," she thanked her, using one of the first words she had mastered. Dolly beamed and darted away to rejoin her playmates. Maria released the frog near the stream, thinking how differently Miguel's childhood would unfold than her own. He would grow up knowing the rhythms of wild places, learning to read the sky and earth as easily as she had once read her grandmother's prayer book. Later that day, as Maria hung strips of venison to dry on a rack, she spotted Nakohe returning from a hunting party. He walked with the fluid grace that still captivated her, a freshly killed deer slung across his shoulders. Men and women called greetings, which he acknowledged with nods or brief responses. When he neared Maria's work area, he paused. "Good meat," he said, indicating the deer. "Your hands help prepare?" "Yes," she replied in Apache, adding in Spanish, "I'm learning." A ghost of a smile crossed his face, a rare expression that Maria had come to treasure. In the weeks since their conversation by the stream, Nakohe had maintained a respectful distance, but his quiet presence was a constant in her days. Sometimes she would look up from her tasks to find his eyes on her, thoughtful and assessing before he turned away. Other times, he would appear silently beside her, offering a handful of berries or a water skin when she had been working long hours. The tribe had begun preparations for winter, harvesting the last wild plants, smoking meat, and repairing dwellings. Maria worked alongside the women, her hands growing calloused and sure. She learned to identify medicinal herbs with bitsoi, to weave baskets tight enough to carry water, to tan hides until they were soft as cloth. Not everyone welcomed her increasing integration. Kiantu and his circle remained coldly hostile, their resentment simmering beneath the surface of daily interactions. Once, when Maria ventured to the far side of camp to gather firewood, 3 young warriors blocked her path. "White eyes bring death," Kiantu said in deliberately slow Apache, ensuring she would understand. "You should have died in the desert." Maria clutched her wood bundle tighter, but refused to lower her gaze. "I am not White Eyes," she responded in his language, her pronunciation careful. "Miguel is of this land." Kiantu's face darkened. He stepped closer, looming over her. "Your blood poisons our—" "Enough!" The single word, spoken with quiet authority, cut through the tension like a knife. Ashki Dagan stood a few paces away, his ceremonial staff in hand. The young warriors stiffened, caught between defiance and respect for the medicine man. "The council has spoken," Ashki Dagan continued. "Would you place your judgment above the elders, Kiantu?" After a tense moment, Kiantu stepped back, though his eyes remained fixed on Maria with undisguised hostility. "Winter comes," he said. "Many things change with cold." As the young men departed, Ashki Dagan approached Maria. He rarely spoke directly to her, though she often sensed his watchful presence. "They fear what they do not understand," he said, surprising her with his use of simple Spanish. "Fear becomes anger easily." "Will they hurt Miguel?" she asked, voicing her deepest concern. The old man considered her question, his eyes reflecting wisdom born of many winters. "Nakohe watches," he said finally. "I watch. Bitsoi watches. But you must also watch." That night, as a chill wind whistled through the valley, Maria sat near her small fire with Miguel sleeping against her chest. The exchange with Kiantu had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. She had begun to feel safe here, to imagine a future where Miguel would grow strong among these people. Now uncertainty crept back like the autumn frost. A soft footfall alerted her to Nakohe's approach. He carried a bundle wrapped in deerskin, which he placed beside her fire before sitting across from her. "I heard," he said without preamble, "about Kiantu." Maria nodded, unsurprised that word had traveled quickly. "He hates what I represent." "He fears change," Nakohe corrected. "The white soldiers push closer each season. Settlers take more land. He sees you as part of this." "And you?" Maria asked, meeting his gaze across the flames. "What do you see when you look at me?" Nakohe was silent for so long that Maria thought he might not answer. Then, With deliberate movements, he unwrapped the bundle he had brought. Inside lay a knife with a bone handle and a leather sheath decorated with intricate beadwork. "I see a woman who survived what would kill many warriors," he said, offering her the knife. "You should have protection of your own." Maria accepted the weapon, feeling its perfect balance in her palm. The blade caught the firelight, gleaming with deadly promise. "Thank you," she said softly. Nakohe nodded, then surprised her by adding, "I will teach you to use it tomorrow." As he rose to leave, a sound caught their attention. A low whistle from the ridge above the valley. One of the sentries signaling. Nakohe tensed, listening as the signal was repeated with increased urgency. "Stay here," he ordered, already moving toward his wickiup where his weapons waited. Throughout the camp, warriors emerged from their dwellings, grabbing bows and spears. Maria clutched Miguel tighter, her heart pounding as she watched Nakohe disappear into the gathering darkness. Maria waited in tense silence, one hand cradling Miguel while the other gripped the knife Nakohe had given her. Around her, the camp transformed with practiced efficiency. Women gathering children into the central wickiups, old men distributing weapons, warriors melting into the darkness toward the ridge where the sentry's signal had come. Bitsoy appeared at Maria's side, her face grave. "Come," she said in Apache, gesturing toward her dwelling. "Safer." Maria hesitated, searching the darkness for a glimpse of Nakohe, but he was gone. She followed Bitsoy, ducking into the healer's wickiup, where Nijoni already waited with several children and 2 elderly women. They sat in tense silence, straining to hear any sound beyond the shelter's walls, time stretched like hide left to dry. Miguel stirred against Maria's chest but did not wake, somehow sensing the need for quiet. Outside, hushed movements and occasional whispers were the only evidence of life in the once bustling camp. Then came the sound. Hoofbeats approaching at a steady pace, neither the cautious stealth of Apache riders nor the thunderous charge of cavalry. Just 3 or 4 horses moving with purpose. Bitsoy placed a restraining hand on Maria's arm when she instinctively rose. "Wait," the older woman whispered. A low call echoed through the camp, an all-clear signal in Apache. Bitsoy relaxed slightly, but kept her position by the entrance flap. Minutes later, voices approached, speaking rapidly in Apache. Maria recognized Nakohe's deep timbre among them. Bitsoy stepped outside, exchanging words with someone. When she returned, her expression was complex. "Come," she said to Maria. "They ask for you." Heart pounding, Maria followed Bitsoy outside. In the center of the camp, illuminated by revived fires, stood Nakohe beside 3 mounted figures. As Maria drew closer, her breath caught. 2 white men and a woman sat on lathered horses, their clothes trail-worn, their faces haggard with exhaustion. But it was the woman who held Maria's gaze. Blonde hair escaped a once neat bun, framing a face that, despite its current state of dishevelment, struck a chord of recognition. "Mrs. Blackwood," Maria whispered. The woman's head snapped up, her eyes widening. "Maria? Maria Sanchez?" Disbelief colored her voice. "My God, we thought you were dead." Eleanor Blackwood, Thomas's mother, looked as though she had seen a ghost. Her companions, whom Maria now recognized as hands from the Blackwood Ranch, seemed equally stunned. "What are you doing here?" Maria managed to ask, acutely aware of the Apache warriors surrounding them, of Miguel sleeping against her chest, of Nakohe's intense gaze shifting between her and the newcomers. "Looking for you," Eleanor replied, her voice breaking. "Thomas, he came back without you, said Indians had attacked the wagon, killed everyone, including you." She swallowed hard. "I knew my son was lying. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes, how he drank himself into a stupor night after night." One of the ranch hands, a weathered man named Jackson, spoke up. "Been tracking for near 2 weeks, found where he left you, followed what signs we could." Maria felt lightheaded. All these weeks, she had believed herself utterly abandoned, forgotten by the world beyond the desert. Yet here were people who had searched for her, who had refused to believe the lies Thomas told. Nakohe stepped forward, his expression guarded. "You come for her," he said in English, not a question but a statement. Eleanor nodded, her gaze fixed on the bundle against Maria's chest. "Is that my son?" Maria said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Miguel." A look of profound emotion crossed Eleanor's face. "My grandson," she breathed. "Thomas's son." Maria did not correct her assumption about Miguel's parentage. Let the woman believe what brought her comfort. The truth of Thomas's betrayal was bitter enough. "We've come to take you home, Maria," Eleanor continued, "where you and the child belong. Home." The word echoed strangely in Maria's mind. The Blackwood Ranch had never been home. She'd been a servant there, tolerated because of Thomas's interest in her. Now she would return as what? The abandoned mother of the air? A charity case? She looked around at the Apache camp, at Bitsoy who had healed her, at Nijoni who had befriended her, at the children who played with Miguel. Finally, her eyes met Nakohe's. His face remained impassive, but she saw something in his gaze, not possession or demand, but a question, a waiting. "I need time," Maria said, turning back to Eleanor. "Tonight you will rest. Tomorrow we will speak." Eleanor looked as though she might protest, but Jackson placed a hand on her arm. "The girl's right, Mrs. Blackwood. We're all done in, and night's no time to be traveling these hills." Ashki Diggin stepped forward, speaking to Nakohe in Apache. After a brief exchange, Nakohe nodded and addressed the visitors. "You stay. No weapons. At dawn, we talk." As arrangements were made to feed and shelter the unexpected guests, Kiantu approached Nakohe, his face contorted with barely controlled rage. "You bring them into our camp," he hissed in Apache, forgetting or not caring that Maria could now understand much of their language. First her, now these white eyes. "They came in peace," Nakohe replied evenly. "Would you have us kill them and bring the soldiers down on our children?" Kiantu's gaze flicked to Maria, cold as winter frost. "Better to face the soldiers than poison ourselves from within." Dawn arrived with a whisper of snow, the first of the season, delicate flakes that melted upon touching the ground but heralded winter's imminent arrival. Maria stood outside her wickiup, Miguel wrapped warmly against her chest, watching the eastern sky lighten. She had barely slept, her mind churning with the impossible choice before her. Return with Eleanor Blackwood to a world that had once rejected her, but now offered Miguel legitimacy and inheritance, a world of wooden houses, iron cookstoves, and Christian prayers. Or remain with the people who had taken her in at her most vulnerable, where Miguel would grow up wild and free, but forever between two worlds. A soft footfall alerted her to Nakohe's approach. He carried a steaming cup of pine needle tea, which he offered without speaking. Maria accepted it gratefully, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. "You did not sleep," he observed. "No," she admitted. "Too many thoughts." Nakohe nodded, his gaze on the distant mountains where clouds gathered, promising more snow. "The white woman, she is kind." "Eleanor?" "Yes," Maria replied after considering. "Strict but fair. She treated me better than most. Better than her son had, certainly. And she would treat Miguel with honor, as blood." The question pierced Maria's heart. Eleanor had immediately claimed Miguel as her grandson, but what would that mean in practice? Would he be accepted as a Blackwood, or forever marked as different, too Mexican for the white world, yet cut off from his mother's heritage? "I believe she would try," Maria answered honestly, "but that world is hard on those who are different." Nakohe seemed to weigh her words. "And here? Is this world not also hard on you?" Maria looked around the camp, now stirring to life as women rekindled fires and children emerged from wickiups, their breath visible in the crisp air. "Different hardness," she said simply. "Here, I am stranger but learning. There, I know ways but am never fully accepted. And Miguel?" The question hung between them, weighty with implication. What future did she choose for her son? The relative comfort and security of the white world, or the freedom and connection to nature of the Apache way? Before she could respond, Eleanor Blackwood appeared, wrapped in a woolen shawl, her grey-streaked hair neatly pinned despite the primitive conditions of her night's lodging. She hesitated when she saw Maria deep in conversation with Nakohe, uncertainty crossing her features. Nakohe noticed her approach and stepped back, inclining his head slightly. "I will find you before council," he said to Maria, then walked away with measured steps. Eleanor watched him go, a complex emotion in her eyes. "He seems different from what I expected," she said as she reached Maria. "Different how?" Maria asked. "More dignified, I suppose." Eleanor shook her head slightly. "Thomas always spoke of the Apache as savages, barely human." "Thomas was wrong about many things," Maria replied, more sharply than she intended. Eleanor's expression softened. "Yes, he was, especially about you." She reached out tentatively. "May I hold my grandson?" Maria hesitated only briefly before unwrapping Miguel and placing him in Eleanor's arms. The older woman's face transformed as she gazed down at the infant, her eyes filling with tears. "He has the Blackwood chin," she whispered, "and Thomas's eyes." Maria said nothing, let Eleanor see what she wished to see. Miguel had her own father's chin and eyes that resembled Nakohe's more than anyone else's, dark and intense, seeming to hold ancient wisdom. "Maria," Eleanor began, her voice earnest, "I know my son wronged you terribly. There's no excuse for what he did. But please understand. At the ranch, you and Miguel would want for nothing. Thomas is gone." "Gone?" Maria interrupted. "What do you mean, gone?" Eleanor's face tightened with grief. "He rode out drunk 3 weeks ago. They found his body 2 days later at the bottom of Copper Canyon. The horse came back. He didn't." The news hit Maria with unexpected force. Thomas, selfish, cowardly Thomas, who had abandoned her to die, was dead himself. She searched her heart for any remnant of love or grief, but found only a hollow sense of waste. So many lives damaged by one man's selfishness. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said finally, the formal words feeling inadequate but necessary. Eleanor nodded in acknowledgement. "The ranch is mine now, and after me, it will be Miguel's. Your son could grow up as the heir to one of the largest spreads in the territory." She looked around at the Apache camp with poorly disguised distaste. He could have education, opportunity, a future among his father's people. "These are also his people," Maria said quietly. "Through me." "You're Mexican, not Indian," Eleanor retorted, then immediately looked contrite. "I'm sorry, that was poorly said. I only meant—" "I know what you meant," Maria interrupted. "But Miguel is of this land, as am I, as are they." She gestured to the camp around them. "The borders drawn on maps mean little to those who have lived here for generations." Eleanor looked troubled, bouncing Miguel gently as he began to fuss. "I'm not explaining myself well. I want what's best for both of you. Safety, security, respectability. And if I choose to stay here..." The older woman's expression fell. "Then I would beg you to at least let me take Miguel, to give him the advantages his birth entitles him to." Maria felt as though she'd been struck. "You would separate me from my son, only if you insist on keeping him in this." Eleanor gestured around them. What kind of life can he have here? What future? Before Maria could form a response, a commotion arose from the far side of the camp. Raised voices, then the clear sound of Kiantu's angry shouts. Maria took Miguel back from Eleanor and hurried toward the disturbance, the older woman following hesitantly. They found a tense standoff near the central fire pit. Jackson, one of the ranch hands, stood rigid with anger, blood streaming from a cut on his cheek. Across from him, Kiantu brandished a knife, his face contorted with rage. Between them stood Nakohe, one hand on Kiantu's wrist, restraining him from further attack. "What happened?" Maria demanded, addressing Jackson in English. "Went to check on the horses," the ranch hand spat. "This one jumped me, started yelling about white devils, cut me before I knew what was happening." Nakohe spoke rapidly in Apache to Kiantu, who responded with equal vehemence. Maria caught fragments, accusations of spying, of signaling to others, of betrayal. "He thinks you are scouts," Maria translated for Eleanor and Jackson, "that you signal for soldiers to come." "That's horseshit," Jackson growled. "Mrs. Blackwood just wants her daughter-in-law and grandson back." Kiantu's eyes fixed on Maria, then on Miguel, his expression darkening further. He spoke again, his words deliberate and cutting. "What's he saying now?" Eleanor asked nervously. Maria swallowed hard. "He says Miguel's white blood poisons the tribe, that we bring only death." Nakohe's grip tightened on Kiantu's wrist. "Enough," he commanded in Apache. "The council will speak on this, not you alone." Ashki Diggin appeared, his ceremonial staff in hand, his face grave. "Bring them," he instructed Nakohe in Apache. "All of them. The council gathers now." The council fire burned high, its flames reaching toward the grey sky as snow began to fall more steadily. The elders sat in a semicircle, their faces solemn as stone. Ashki Diggin occupied the center position, flanked by 4 older men and 2 women whose deeply lined faces spoke of decades of survival in a harsh land. Nakohe stood to one side, his position neither with the council nor with the accused, but somewhere in between. Maria, Eleanor, and the 2 ranch hands were placed opposite the elders. Behind them, the entire tribe gathered, women clutching children, warriors with hands never far from weapons, youngsters watching with wide eyes. Kiantu and his followers stood together, a knot of barely contained hostility. Bitsoy appeared at Maria's side, taking Miguel from her arms. "I will hold him," she said softly in Apache. "Council is no place for little ones." Maria hesitated, then relinquished her son, knowing he would be safe with the healer. Ashki Diggin raised his ceremonial staff, and silence fell over the gathering. He spoke in Apache, his voice carrying clearly despite his age. "Our people face many challenges," he began. "The white eyes push closer each season. The game grows scarce. Old enemies move across our hunting grounds, and now this, strangers in our camp, blood spilled." He fixed Kiantu with a stern gaze. "Speak your grievance." Kiantu stepped forward, his body tense as a drawn bow. "These white eyes are scouts," he declared, pointing at Eleanor and her companions. "They come with lies about the Mexican woman's child, but their true purpose is to find our camp, to count our warriors, to report back to the blue-coat soldiers." His voice rose, impassioned. "And she," he jabbed a finger toward Maria, "she is the bait that drew them here. First her, then these, next 100 soldiers with guns and fire." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Maria felt Eleanor stiffen beside her, though the older woman couldn't understand the specific words. "What evidence do you have?" one of the elder women asked. "What more evidence is needed?" Kiantu retorted. "Everywhere the white eyes go, death follows. Our lands shrink, our people die. This is known." "That is history, not evidence," the woman corrected sharply. "What proof do you have of these specific white eyes' intentions?" Kiantu faltered momentarily, then rallied. "I saw the man by the horses. He examined them closely, as if counting, assessing." "I was checking on our own damn horses," Jackson protested when Maria translated, "making sure they were fit for the journey back." Ashki Diggin raised a hand for silence, then turned to Maria. "You brought these outsiders to our sacred place, even if unintentionally." What say you of their purpose?" Maria stood, conscious of all eyes upon her. She spoke in Apache, her words careful but clear. "These people came seeking me and my son. The woman is Miguel's grandmother by blood. She believed us dead, killed by Apache raiders. When she learned this was false, she came to find us." Maria paused, then added with quiet dignity, "She offers us a place among her people. Safety, land, future." This revelation caused another stir among the tribe. Nakohe's expression remained unreadable, but his eyes never left Maria's face. "And do you wish to go with them?" Ashki Digin asked, the question hanging in the cold air, like the snowflakes that now fell more thickly. Maria looked around the circle. At Bitsoy cradling Miguel, at Nijoni with her hand protectively over her swollen belly, at the children who had accepted her son as one of their own, then at Eleanor, whose face was etched with hope and anxiety. "I have known both worlds," Maria said finally. "In one, I am always apart, always less. In the other, I am learning to belong, but the path is harder." She straightened her shoulders. "I choose the harder path. I choose to stay if the council permits it, but I ask that Miguel's grandmother be allowed to know him, to visit when seasons permit." Eleanor gasped when Maria's words were translated for her. "Maria, please reconsider." Kiantu cut her off with a derisive laugh. "You see, they do not accept her choice. They will return with more, to take what they want by force." "Silence," commanded Ashki Digin. He studied Maria thoughtfully, then shifted his gaze to Nakohe. "You brought her to us. What say you in this matter?" Nakohe stepped forward, his presence commanding attention without effort. "When I found Maria and her son, they were moments from death. The eagle led me to them for a purpose." His eyes met Maria's briefly before returning to the council. "She has learned our ways with respect. She works without complaint. She defends her child as fiercely as any of our women would." He paused. "I believe her presence brings strength, not weakness, to our people." Kiantu made a sound of disgust. "Your judgment is clouded by what stirs beneath your blankets." A dangerous stillness fell over Nakohe. "My blankets remain my own, as do my thoughts. Can you say the same, Kiantu? Or do the whispers of fear own your mind?" Before Kiantu could retort, Ashki Digin struck his staff against the ground. "Enough! The council will deliberate." He gestured for the central space to be cleared. "When the sun touches the western ridge, we will speak our decision." As the crowd dispersed, Eleanor caught Maria's arm. "You can't mean to stay here," she pleaded. "Think of Miguel, of his future." "I am thinking of his future," Maria replied quietly. "A future where he knows who he truly is, not just what others wish him to be." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "And what of me? Am I to lose my only grandchild after losing my son?" Maria's heart softened. "No. If the council permits, you will always be welcome to visit. Miguel should know all of his family." Nakohe approached, his expression guarded. "The storm grows stronger," he said, looking at the thickening snowfall. "Your people should come inside." He gestured toward his own wickiup, larger than most, and positioned near the center of camp, an offer that did not go unnoticed by those watching. As they walked, Maria felt the weight of eyes upon them, some curious, some hostile, some calculating. Whatever the council decided, nothing would be the same after today. The sun hung low on the western ridge, its light diffused through clouds heavy with snow. The tribe gathered once more around the council fire, their breaths visible in the cold air. Maria stood with Miguel bundled against her chest, Eleanor at her side. The ranch hands waited by their horses at the edge of camp, ready for whatever judgment came. Ashki Digin raised his staff, and the murmurs ceased. Snow fell silently around them, dusting shoulders and hair with white flakes that glistened in the firelight. "The council has spoken with one voice," the medicine man announced. Maria and her son may remain among the people if that is her choice. Relief flooded through Maria, so intense that her knees nearly buckled. Eleanor's face fell, though she maintained her composure with admirable dignity. "But this comes with conditions," Ashki-Diggin continued. "The white woman may visit when the leaves return to the trees. She will come alone, or with one companion only. She will bring no weapons, no soldiers, no others who have not been approved by the council." Kiantu stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "This is folly. You invite the storm into our lodge." "The decision is made," Ashki-Diggin replied firmly. "Unless you wish to challenge the authority of the council." A tense silence followed as Kiantu visibly struggled with himself. To challenge the council was to challenge generations of tradition, to place himself outside the tribe's governing structure. Finally, he spat on the ground. "When the bluecoats come with fire and lead, remember who warned you," he said bitterly. With that, he turned and stalked toward his wickiup, followed by several of his supporters. Ashki-Diggin watched him go, his ancient eyes troubled but resolute. Then he addressed Eleanor directly, speaking in halting English. "You come in peace, you find welcome. You come with soldiers." He drew a finger across his throat in universal gesture. "I want only to know my grandson," Eleanor replied, her voice steady despite her obvious disappointment. "I give you my word, no soldiers, no trouble." The medicine man nodded, accepting her pledge. "Return when snow melts. Bring gifts for naming ceremony." "Naming ceremony?" Eleanor echoed, looking to Maria for explanation. "Miguel will receive his Apache name in spring," Maria explained. "It would honor us if you attended." Eleanor's eyes welled with tears, of sadness or gratitude, perhaps both. "I will come," she promised, reaching out to touch Miguel's cheek one last time. As preparations were made for the visitors' departure, Nakohe approached Maria. "I will guide them to the valley's edge," he said. "The storm grows stronger. They must reach the settlers' road before full dark." Maria nodded, watching as Eleanor mounted her horse with the help of Jackson. "Nakohe," she called softly, "thank you for speaking for us." He turned, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I spoke truth," he said simply. Then he was gone, leading the small party through the swirling snow toward the pass that would take them back to the world Maria had chosen to leave behind. That night, as the storm raged outside, Maria sat in her wickiup with Miguel sleeping peacefully beside her. The fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the wind sang mournful songs around the smoke hole. She fingered the eagle amulet Bitsoy had given her, feeling its smooth contours, drawing strength from what it represented. A soft sound outside her dwelling drew her attention. "Enter," she called in Apache. The entrance flap lifted, and Nakohe ducked inside, bringing a swirl of snowflakes with him. He carried a bundle wrapped in deerskin. "The storm is bad," he said, brushing snow from his shoulders. "I wanted to be sure you had enough firewood to last the night." Maria smiled, recognizing the statement as the pretext it was. "We are warm enough," she assured him. "Did the white woman and her men reach the road safely?" "Yes. I watched until they were beyond the ridge." Nakohe hesitated, then placed the bundle beside her fire. "I brought something else." Curious, Maria unwrapped the deerskin to find a cradle board, beautifully crafted of bent wood and soft leather, decorated with intricate beadwork and protective symbols. A traditional Apache gift for a new mother, though Miguel was no longer a newborn. "It is beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the detailed work. "Did you make this?" "The wood and leather, yes," he acknowledged. "Bitsoy and Nijoni added the beadwork." He paused, watching her face. "There is meaning in each symbol. Protection, strength, belonging." Maria looked up at him, her heart full. Thank you for this and for everything you have done for us." Nakohe settled opposite her, the fire between them. "The council asked me something today," he said after a moment. "They asked if I would claim Miguel as my son, not by blood, but by choice." Maria's breath caught. "And what did you answer?" "I said that such a question should be asked of the child's mother." His gaze was steady, revealing nothing and everything at once. "So I ask you now, Maria Sanchez, would you permit me to be a father to your son?" The question hung in the air, weighted with all it implied, not just for Miguel, but for Maria herself. She studied Nakohe's face, searching for any hint of obligation or pity, finding only quiet certainty. "Is this your way of asking me to be your wife?" she asked softly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My people believe that paths cross for reasons the eye cannot always see. The eagle led me to you and Miguel when you needed shelter. Perhaps you came to me when I needed purpose." He extended his hand, palm up, across the fire. "I offer not just shelter, but partnership, not just survival, but life." Maria placed her hand in his, feeling the strength and gentleness of his grip. "Yes," she said simply, "for Miguel and for myself." Snow continued to fall throughout the night, blanketing the valley in pristine white, erasing boundaries and smoothing harsh edges. By morning, the world was transformed, neither as it had been, nor as anyone had expected, but beautiful in its new form. Spring came to the mountains in a riot of wildflowers and birdsong. The ceremony took place on the first full moon of the season, with the entire tribe gathered to witness. Miguel, now sturdy and strong at 6 months, sat in his beaded cradleboard, watching the proceedings with solemn eyes. Eleanor Blackwood had kept her word, arriving alone as the first leaves unfurled. She brought gifts, silver jewelry, fine wool blankets, and a small wooden horse she had carved herself. If she harbored any remaining resentment over Maria's choice, she did not show it, instead embracing her role as grandmother with gracious determination. Ashki-Diggin presided over the naming ceremony, his face painted with sacred symbols, eagle feathers adorning his staff. Nakohe stood tall and proud beside Maria, both of them dressed in ceremonial garments adorned with shells and beads that caught the moonlight. "This child bridges two worlds," the medicine man proclaimed in Apache, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "Born of one people, embraced by another, he will walk with the wisdom of both." He touched Miguel's forehead with a mixture of sacred ochre and spring water. "From this day forward, he shall be known among our people as Hake Chona, Eagle Child." The tribe repeated the name in unison, accepting Miguel into their circle with this final formal acknowledgement. Even Kiantu, who had maintained a cold distance since the council's decision, nodded slightly in recognition of the moment's significance. As the celebration continued around them, Maria found a quiet moment with Eleanor. The older woman had watched the ceremony with visible emotion, though she couldn't understand the words. "He has two names now," Maria said. "Miguel for your world, Hake Shona for this one." Eleanor smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Two names, two families, two legacies." She squeezed Maria's hand. "You've made a good life here. Different than I would have chosen for you, but good nonetheless." "You will always be welcome," Maria assured her. "Miguel should know all of his history." "And you?" Eleanor asked, glancing toward Nakohe, who stood speaking with Ashki-Diggin. "Are you truly happy?" Maria followed her gaze, feeling the familiar warmth that rose within her whenever she looked at the man who had become her husband in the Apache way. "I found something I never knew I was seeking," she said softly. "Not just survival, but belonging. Not just shelter, but home." Later, as the moon reached its zenith, Maria and Nakohe stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, Miguel sleeping peacefully in his father's arms. Below them, the fires of the celebration glowed like earthbound stars. "The summer will bring changes," Nakohe said, his voice thoughtful. "More settlers move across the land each season. The soldiers push closer to our hunting grounds." "Are you worried?" Maria asked. "Concerned, but not fearful. Our people have faced many storms and endured." He looked down at Miguel, touching the boy's cheek with gentle fingers. "He will know both peace and struggle, as all men do, but he will never know abandonment." Maria leaned against Nakohe's shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him, the unwavering certainty that had first drawn her to trust this man when she had no reason to trust anyone. "When you found me by that boulder," she said, "did you ever imagine this?" Nakohe considered the question, his gaze turning to the vast expanse of stars overhead. "The eagle knows where it flies before the wing moves," he said finally. "Perhaps my heart knew what my mind did not yet understand." A lone eagle called from somewhere in the darkness, its cry echoing across the valley. A reminder of the vision that had led Nakohe to a sun-bleached boulder where a desperate woman cradled her newborn son. One moment that had changed 3 lives irreversibly, binding them together with ties stronger than blood. As they descended the ridge to rejoin their people, Maria thought of all the paths that had led to this moment. Thomas's betrayal, the harsh desert crossing, the pain of childbirth, the stranger who had appeared like a spirit in the darkness. Each step, even the painful ones, had been necessary to bring her here, to this life, to this belonging. The desert had not claimed them after all. Instead, it had delivered them home,